played some jazz for probably 30 odd seconds. Let's see after the session if that works or not. We'll come back to that. So yeah, I think today's panel discussion is around AI adoption, maturity, measurement. So fundamentally, what we are trying to do today is we're going to start this discussion with this panel over here, experienced leaders, wherein we'll talk about credibility of AI usage, and then adoption, that's very important. And then we'll go to transformation in terms of how do organizations need to transform to be able to leverage AI to its full extent. And then we'll kind of close the loop with measurement and efficacy of the AI programs. So to begin with, Kevin, if I may request you to introduce yourself a little bit and what makes you interested in this topic, and then we'll come to the first question.
Yeah, hi everyone. Kevin King, Crunchyroll. I'm sure you're all kind of sick and tired of him by now. I think we all care about AI. I think the thing that I care about most with AI is practical usage and smart usage. Just because something is new and shiny doesn't necessarily mean we should be using it for everything. And so that's, I think, what I'm excited to talk about today.
Absolutely, and shiny objects. Remember that word. Aziz, please, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Aziz Chaudhary. I'm with Premera Blue Cross. We're a health payer based up in Washington State. For me personally on AI, this to me is probably one of the biggest revolutionary changes that we're facing in the business place since the internet, how things are changing, but this impacts individuals. And when I look at my population, what worries me are the folks that are going to be left behind. They are the people that need to build the skills, build the confidence, build the abilities, because in 5 years, if they don't, they will not be part of the workforce. So how do you look at historically underrepresented groups and making sure that they have access to learning and development so that they can keep pace with the early adopters?
Thank you. For a moment, I thought you were placing AI as the biggest transformation. Thank God you said since internet, because for us millennials, the internet was probably the biggest transformation.
There was a world before Facebook.
Absolutely. Susan, please, if you could.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Susan McKinda. I'm the Director of Learning Experience at Visa. And I think one of the things that excites me about AI is I am a creator and I love to think wild thoughts. And so AI is probably one of those vehicles that's going to untap the art of the possible. And so we were having a great conversation where I said, one of the things that AI is going to kind of have a tension point, I'd say this to my team with designers around asking them, are you going to be a builder in this experience or are you going to be a creator? And what role are you going to play? Because if you are going to be a builder, you may not be here tomorrow. So let's have that conversation. What is that kind of runway you need? And where do you want to see yourself and position that in AI? And what does that mean for you and how do you position that in a place that speaks to you?
That's great. I think builder versus thinker, that's one thing to note in this conversation today. And Carrie, please, if you could talk a little bit about yourself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Carrie Cruz. I am a director for training for Vallarta Supermarkets. If you're not familiar with us, we are the fastest growing Hispanic chain in Southern California. Those who would disagree is probably just our competition. And prior to that, quite recently, 3 days ago, I just graduated with my executive education at MIT, focusing on organizational transformation and our favorite topic, AI. So the reason that this interested me a lot is because coming from an academic point of view to a practical usage, AI will definitely be useful if it's measured and if it directly ties into business outcomes. And that's exactly why I'm happy to contribute to this panel.
And thank you. We are looking forward to it. You mentioned a very important point, academic versus practical usage and measurement. That's very critical. So now we'll start with the discussion. So I was fascinated, and again I keep going back to Neil's presentation on the opening day. I was fascinated when he brought that slide up that said AI, 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 AI. That's literally everyone that's hearing these days nowadays, and that's fine. So Kevin, coming to the credibility part, right? So there's clearly a lot of AI buzz, and as the other day we were discussing that some of those things are glorified versions or repackaged versions of Claude or some of the other, ChatGPT kind of tools. But from your perspective, how should leaders separate real value of AI from what the hype is actually?
This is, I think, a really great question. And I want to start off by saying, I think Neil set a really good tone. I don't know if everyone else has been going to a lot of conferences lately, but AI is a thing. And it is this kind of mass adoption, everyone is pushing it. And Neil set the right tone, I think, for the conference by saying we should be thinking about the human impact. So to begin with, for leaders to be really effective, I think they need to be thinking about how and why they're using AI. They shouldn't just be pushing it out for the sake of using AI because there's a board member who thinks it'll revolutionize the business. They should be thinking about how it can supercharge the things that they're already doing. A good leader is going to get supercharged by AI, and a bad leader, AI will potentially accentuate those flaws. Critical thought is really vital, and I'm sure everyone in this room has stories at their company where they've seen leaders create their entire fiscal year strategy using ChatGPT or Claude, and then send it in an email and not even read it. And you can tell that it was written by AI. Much in the way that we have survey fatigue, we're already seeing AI fatigue happen. When you see a video that you know was generated with an AI script, you kind of move on, If I see an email from an executive or a peer that it was very clearly written with AI, it has less impact. And so I think the role of the leader is to still use AI, but to always be reviewing it and critiquing it. And you have to build in a devil's advocate into your AI. You should ask the AI to push back. How many people here have maybe applied for a job recently and put their resume into ChatGPT or Claude and been told, wow, you're amazing for this role? Anyone? Yeah. Like I have some friends who I've been helping in this awful market, and they're like, well, ChatGPT said I was perfect for this role. And maybe they are, but it's not giving you the pushback that you need. Normally, I think classically, as we're writing strategy for our departments as leaders, we pressure test it with our team, we go to our peers, we ask for feedback, people tell us, hey, there's a problem here. We're not always getting that at surface level with some of the language learning models. When we look at language learning models, they can't create something new. We're not at actual intelligence yet. They're just taking what's already in the model and giving you what it thinks the next most viable word is. So if we were to feed in all of the information that Albert Einstein had prior to writing the theory of relativity, none of the models that exist could give us the theory of relativity. And they've done this study. It is we don't have actual intelligence. So if you're asking your model to help you write strategy, and you're not reviewing it, and you're not pressure testing it, and you're not bringing in the human aspect of your brain, you're going to end up with something that really isn't innovating. You're not going to be pushing the business. And we're going to talk a lot today about how to use AI effectively, but I think starting with critical thought being the key feature is really important to the conversation.
Absolutely, Kevin. I totally agree with you. We as humans, we have emotions. So obviously we can understand what's written through AI and what's written by a human and how it feels like. And credibility is very important. I have seen peers, colleagues, leaders losing credibility because they have simply used prompt-based generated communication. And I think critical thinking, the point that you mentioned, that's very important. And I think since last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, World Economic Forum has putting that critical thinking as top of the 10 skills that individuals need to have. Probably now is the time that that needs to be taken really seriously, starting from the academic levels globally to the workplace level. So that was on the credibility part, and we'll come back to you, Kevin, again. So Aziz, post the credibility, let's say that we are able to kind of demonstrate the credible behavior of AI through wise usage. But then comes the adoption part. So in your opinion, what are you seeing on the ground in terms of employees? How are they adopting it? Is there any hesitation, resistance, or skepticism to adopt AI? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, we saw a full spectrum. We had people who were early adopters, could not be more excited. We had people who were focusing in on the thoughtful and intentional usage of AI, not just running out there. We had people who said, I think I'm interested, but I'm not sure. And we had people who would have rolled their eyes when you would bring it up. And for us, our organization is full of C's. We love ourselves as subject matter experts. And, God bless them, they're great, but they think that everything can be handled through instruction. And so we launched a lot of activities. And in those activities, it was, you can do this, you can do that, blah, blah, blah. And nowhere in there was, and here's why you'd want to do that. And so as a response to that, in human resources, we realized what we needed was a strategy, a focused strategy on how to get folks engaged, how to meet them where they're at, and understand that not everyone is going to be at that same level, that same pace, or that same commitment that we were having. Now, when I said earlier, for me personally, making sure that folks don't get overlooked in this process is really important. So it was reaching out to specific groups and finding out what stops from doing this. And after we got through the surface answers, what we realized is there was a huge amount of uncertainty. And we can't eliminate that uncertainty. I can't promise you're not going to lose your job or you're not going to get restructured. But what we can do is help people understand that they can impact that they have control over this, which is what they learn, what they do with it, and we would want to encourage that through psychological safety, through education, and really through very targeted, focused activities.
Thank you. A very interesting point that you mentioned about the entire spectrum. So, and we all have seen that entire spectrum. So at one point of time, CXOs are saying that, we have this bunch of AI tools and licenses, which we have subscribed to, and there's no usage. And on the other hand, we have companies like Uber, who exhausted their entire fiscal year's budget in one quarter. So that's kind of the entire spectrum. But the point that you mentioned about, meet the individuals where they are, that's really important. There's a lot of talk that has been happening about learning in the flow of work has been coined. Before that, there was just-in-time learning. All these mean to be, meet the learner where they are. But were the traditional LMSs able to do it? A lot of them claim that we have adapted learning pathways, customized, personalized learning pathways, but were they there before AI came in? I think AI just augmented it to make it enabled. And the commitment part that you mentioned, that kind of strikes me. For example, you're in the same role, same experience, but your commitment can vary, right? So based on your commitment, how much you want to get pushed, that's also very important. So if we can kind of bring in those parameters in place and then really make it customized, personalized for the learners and meet where they are. So great point. So again, we'll come back to you with the next question. So Susan, let's say that, the credibility is there, the adoption is there, and you're living in the ideal world. But what needs to change? So I remember we were having a conversation and you mentioned that, something very powerful. You said that AI shouldn't just see as a tool. It's actually a way of working. So in your opinion, what does this shift really looks like when it comes to how do organizations transform to adapt to this? How do job roles transform to adapt to this?
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to share. So I would say, just contextualizing, at Visa, it's running at lightning speed when we think about AI adoption. And so talking from a maturity model, we're talking about an organization that everybody is using AI to the point where I'm like, calm down with the AI. There's so many models out there, so many agents, thousands of them floating around. And yes, we are got usage, but the transformation element, I feel like, is still not there. And so when I think about transformation, and where I've been in my career, I always look at it in terms of those three-pronged areas: people, process, and tech. And oftentimes we start with the tech, but we forget about the people and the process, and that comes to be the afterthought. So when we talk about that afterthought, let's say for me, when I'm going in a transformation and think about my L&D org, I'm talking about, let's start with the process. When we talk about starting with the process and looking at AI, we also have to unpack that AI can cover so much in an L&D organization, right? We talk about transformation. So I like to segment it into 3 buckets. You got your front end pieces, right? Your learner-facing AI opportunities. You've got your back end operations, right? From how you're operating and using AI. And then you've just got this general productivity, right? Of keeping your life up in AI. When you start understanding from your front end, like what are those intentional moments that you want to start leveraging in AI from a process perspective or an experience standpoint, then you can start to kind of look at what are those AI enablers that you would like to look at and utilize as part of that, and starting to kind of put together some sort of metric around what does those experiences and what do we want to complement. I think adding some sort of structure becomes to be powerful. When you talk about your operations, it's very important. One of the things that I've done recently is I've started to say with my team, let's look at all the way from intake to delivering our programs and list every task that we do. Like, we're just listing them. And then we're gonna ask ourselves, and we're gonna ask AI too, well, where can AI help in this particular situation? And then we start looking at the AI kind of support, the human start support, then we start to formulate, start to look at what those job roles are, right? You start to see where the humans start to play into that kind of intake to deliver experience. You start to see where the agent starts to augment into that element. And then you can start to have much more in-depth conversations about moving from using AI as an assistant, right, to using AI to complete tasks. And I think that is where the transformation element, a lot of companies are trying to get there. Is like, yeah, go ahead and just put that email in. That's not transformational. It's about how are you augmenting your processes using AI to do multiple components of steps, but then also you have those human intersections going on. So it takes and changes the job roles and responsibilities. And you start to see where AI starts shaping itself, where the human starts shaping itself. And then you start as an organization saying, hey, this is the new job role, right? That's where we need to get, because it is a way of working. And so it's not about the tool. There's too many tools out here. It's like, how are we working? Who's on first, who's on second? And how are we partnering with AI as a peer versus AI as an assistant?
Actually, there are quite a few solid points that you made. So shout out for Anthropics and OpenAIs of the world. AI it's not about the tool, right? It's about the people, the process, right? I mean, when I started my career, one of my leaders taught me about this concept of people, process, and technology. These are the 3 pillars on which you construct a business, you operate a business, you grow a business. And thank you very much. Like, I've heard this phrase probably after 20 years for bringing this up. I'm sure a lot of us in this room believe in this people, process, technology. If you believe in it, just can we have a show of hands who believes in people, process, technology? Yeah, I think all of us mostly believe in this. The role transformations that you mentioned, that's very important. Like, I think when this AI buzz came in, every other organization had a chief AI information officer, a job role that was defined. But now it's about going beyond that. For example, an instructional designer who's adept at working with AI is no longer an instructional designer. That job transformation, that job role needs to change. In fact, even how you gather the requirements. For example, if you're leveraging AI in a project, and we do this at Harbinger very significantly, is that if you're gathering the requirement of the project and if you're leveraging AI, then as part of the requirement gathering, you need to also understand that how the AI would behave, whether it's agents or tools, you have to consider that. So that's more or less about transformation, right? So it's like the job roles and the processes and all those things that work out. So thank you for bringing that point up, and definitely it's about the builder versus the thinker kind of concept coming back. So coming to you, Carrie, first of all, congratulations on your recent academic achievement. That's great. So now you mentioned about, the efficacy and the measurement. So before we come to that, like every AI initiative at any organization today, I think mostly becomes like there is a significant change management involved in it. So based on your experience, what separates AI initiatives that scale versus from those pilots that fail and never scale?
So I'd like to answer that to give context on two different schools of thought. So prior to Vallarta Supermarkets, my experience for over 15 years was in global conglomerates such as Colgate-Palmolive, Keurig Dr. Pepper, Kraft Foods. And they like to do what I like to say sexy metrics, where you like to measure usage or impressions or clicks. So they feel like AI is something that is written as a manifesto. Hey, everyone should use it. And the questions they ask is, how do we use AI? How do we get better? How do we get faster? And those are all great things because they like to measure based off of data. And we love dashboards in the former companies that I've worked for. In fact, we even make jokes that dashboards mean board, B-O-E-R-D, because there's so much information. But really, when we take a step back, AI is not the strategy. AI is simply an accelerator for a clearly defined business problem. What is the issue that we're trying to solve? What are the metrics that we need to look at? And that was my learning when I moved to Vallarta. It's really, what are the things that are more tangible? It's not the tool, it's not the strategy. It's overall, how does it contribute to your top line? And that's where change management happens. I am a big proponent of what is measured gets done. Has anyone in the room had, let's say, a fitness goal in the past? Have we heard, oh, I'm gonna cut carbs today, or oh, I'm gonna eat healthier? And chances are, by the first day, or maybe the first hour, those are destined to not be set up for success because there's no metric, there's no goal. Same with AI as well. If you apply it to your day-to-day without an end in mind, then it's basically a setup for just being, to Kevin's point, a shiny new toy. So for practical use cases, let's say for Vallarta Supermarkets, AI is used to look at labor costs, so look at number of hours reduced. It's taking a look at retention, attrition. So once AI and how effective it is tied into those numbers, then definitely you'll see success. That's one portion of it, measurement. The second part, which I feel is probably more important, is your behavior change. And from training, we always like to use the word stickability, like a check the box exercise is something that probably won't work. How many times have I used AI? That's not really the measure here. And I don't know about anyone in the room, but once we're trained into something, there are some people, when you have courses online, you just go skip, 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 skip. Typically, that would happen because it's a check the box exercise. But with behavior change and adoption, that's where the real magic begins. And once you see progress from your measurement, and then you see behavior change, that's where you win hearts and minds when it becomes a part of their day-to-day, to Susan's point. It becomes a part of how they do things that makes them more efficient. So without these processes of change management, then now you're able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, then I feel a little bit better about using this tool. Rather than wallowing in uncertainty, you're now more set up for success.
No, thank you. That's a great point that you made. So I like the idea of AI being used as an accelerator, not as a strategy per se. So when you kind of, as part of the change management process, when you coach people, that's gonna help you accelerate the task and eventually help you grow the business. And then if you can show them tangible results that based on your efforts, while you're leveraging AI, these are the kind of outputs that you're getting, these are the kind of metrics that you're getting, and that's an intrinsic motivation for the individuals and the employees. And I feel at that point of time, the mindset would probably change. Now it's not about, whether AI will replace my job. No, I'm equipped with something, a tool, a technology, which can help me do better, faster, save cost for the organization. Probably that's one perspective to take a look at it. But thank you for connecting the dots from credibility to adoption to transformation to change management. So, and we would encourage you to kind of ask questions, counter opinions, or share your thoughts and experiences. So we have the timer ticking there. There's 17 and a half minutes to go. And we have 4 more questions, but please feel free to kind of chime in between if you want to ask any question or share any thoughts with any of the panelists over here. So Kevin, coming back to you, we spoke about, let's say we kind of put the base layer together, but now to really make it scale, where do most organizations probably do not get it right when it comes to executing it or strategizing it at the leadership level?
Yeah, I think we are all collectively figuring it out how to get it right together. We have Visa that is sprinting, and that's incredible. We have Crunchyroll that is in kind of like an early mid adoption right now. And so I think we all know that the early adopters are already using it. We've got the power users, but how do we get the next group in it? Part of that is, I think, equipping leaders with the strategy for how to get people to want to use AI. And I think that starts with teaching them how to disambiguate the term. Clarity is really, really important as a leader. One of our biggest jobs is to create clarity, remove roadblocks, to provide feedback. I would say those are like the 3 things that a leader really needs to do. When we go to our team and we say, you need to use AI, without a how or a what, like AI is a lot of things. Is this a chatbot? Is this an LLM search? Is this an agent? Being really specific with our language and teaching our leaders the right sort of language to use, I think is a really useful way to get them to feel comfortable talking to their teams. The next step is teaching them really the basics of how to get started with AI. What are the 3 things we should be doing with AI? If something is a repeated task, it can likely be automated. If it's a rules-based task, so if we are reviewing a document for like legal compliance, anything that has a rule can be automated with AI. Anything research-based can be sped up with AI, and we can use agents or GPTs to do all of this. I was talking to someone today at breakfast. I don't know where she is right now, but I was talking to someone today at breakfast who was talking about goal setting in her organization. And they had hundreds of goals, and normally the act of reporting on all of these goals, yes, thank you. Kirsten, correct? Love it when I get a name right. The act of summarizing these goals and reporting on them to leadership usually takes months, and she was able to do it in 7 minutes. That's a research-based goal. That's awesome. That's providing real value to the organization. And that's something that I think our teams can really get on board with, but we have to give them the use cases. I think just blanket saying like, hey, we want you to use AI, figure it out, isn't going to work. We have to disambiguate it.
Absolutely. I think clarity with purpose is what we all need. I mean, all of us would have heard of this, like, a lot of organizations are pushing the envelope on getting their workforce upskill on AI. What does it mean? Buying 5,000 licenses of Udemy, of AI courses and rolling out worldwide? No, I don't think so that's gonna work. You have to have very specific, like you mentioned, the use cases, right? The reports that you mentioned, like, which was done in 7 minutes, that was done with clarity, with purpose, right? She exactly knew what she wants and how she wants the AI to respond to her request. That's what we want. So
I'd like to add to
Sure.
the point on, if I may, on clarity as well and use cases as much as governance and guardrails. Like definitely for AI in particular, because there is a possibility of misuse without having the right governance and guardrails to use it, people can just go haywire. And with that guidance also comes and communication. As leaders, we also owe it to our teams to create that safe space so they're able to communicate those fears and uncertainty. And once they feel like they're in that, then all the more will that working relationship be even better with the user.
To build on that,
Yeah.
I think regulation, guardrails, governance are really important, not just to stop people from doing bad things, but providing win conditions to an objective makes it easier to achieve the objective. And so setting the constraints for the organization or for the team of this is how we want to operate and how we don't want to operate gives people a world to live in where they can be creative.
Yes.
And thanks Kevin, and thank you Kerry for kind of adding that. That's actually a very important aspect, and I'll kind of take this to Aziz in terms of the adoption. Like all of us would have seen that there is a certain section of our workforce or our employees who have a bit of fear in terms of adoption. What if I get it wrong? What if I get questioned at whether you have used AI to do it? And that's where all these guardrails, governance, and creating that ecosystem for that particular organization wherein they feel safe psychologically to use it. Do you feel that in the adoption space this is important? And if you have kind of encountered these type of cases, and how you would have handled at your organization?
That's a great setup question. Thank you for that. Yeah, it absolutely was important for us. And where we started was language. And one of the first things we did is encourage our leaders to stop talking about efficiency when it comes to AI. The more we talk about how to be more productive, how to be more efficient, the less connected employees or individual contributor or anyone is going to be towards achieving the goal. Productivity helps the organization. It doesn't help the individual in that process. So we're starting on that process. Very slow, very hard, because people are so conditioned to think of AI as an efficiency tool that it's hard to get them to stop. The other was making sure we could help meet people where they were at. You talked about measurement. So one of the first things we did was encourage people to set up goals, right? But the goals had to be targeted to where those individuals were. So what we found where our goals came into 3 categories. One was individual utilization. So just getting familiar with the tools, comfortable with them, and no judgment. It's fine that you don't know how to use Copilot. That's our tool that we utilize. Make a commitment to get better at that, formalize it, put it into the goals section. The second was encouraging people to work on optimizing their efforts. So what work are they doing that AI could be doing for them, freeing them up to operate at a higher level on their job description. And then the third goals were on the more enterprise level and encouraging folks to really look at process systems and say, hey, AI could help us approach this differently. So depending on where you were on the spectrum, you found a place, and that there was validity and equality amongst all of those goals. We could measure them, we the work of adoption. We've put a goal in the system, how are they doing against it? And it was a safer way to acknowledge this for all those folks. And then the third area that we focused in on was probably the hardest. And that was with folks who were very excited. And they would come up with these tools and they'd come to us in HR and say, hey, you should use this tool. And, we would be very grateful, not really. We would be very, gracious in that, but then, starting to look at it from an ethical standpoint, from a thoughtful standpoint, finding out often that those tools met the need of the individuals, but probably not appropriate on an enterprise-wide level. But how can we redirect folks? And how can we get their managers to redirect them? Because it's not just something to do, it's a problem that needs to be solved. And generally, a lot of people have opinions about it, not just one individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to the initial part of what you mentioned is about, I think you mentioned something around, as leaders, we said that don't push too much on the efficiency part to begin with. Right? And that makes me think. So let's say there's a very efficient quarterback for one of the NFL teams. They've bought these AI tools and technologies and they're analyzing their data and performance and everything. And you tell someone like a Tom Brady that, you know what, you're lacking here. Use this data, it will improve your efficiency. So, yeah, that's helpful, right? Data, insights, that's helpful, but there is a balancing act in terms of how you do it. And I think to connect it to Aziz's point is like, right at the first day, if you say that, you know what, if you use this, you're gonna be to Sam Bolt. No, that's not gonna happen. It's kind of meet the individual where they are, and make them feel safe. That's where the adoption kind of
It starts there. I think when you lead a conversation on with efficiency, that doesn't create a lot of safety. That's a zero-sum game for the employee. And if that's the path they're on, that's the path they're going to stay on. They will not believe you when you start changing your language. They will not believe you when corporate results are less than, their job is safe. And they won't bring whatever it is that they have, that je ne sais quoi, to the problem solving.
Yeah.
And so that safety is core, and it starts with language. Wow. That's something so simple.
I would, Aziz, the word that we have is speed. If I hear the word speed one more time, I'm like, it's like, we're gonna move at speed. And I'm like, we're already moving fast. How much faster do you want me to move? And one of the things that we had a conversation about earlier, Carrie, was around this element of cognitive wear and tear that I don't think we're taking into consideration about just because you can do more, right? Doesn't mean your brain is ready to do all that and consistently in the framing that they're wanting you to do. Because they're talking, when you say speed, it's not just we're gonna speed a little bit, we're gonna stop. It's constant, right? So every organization, like, we're gonna speed, we're gonna scale, we're gonna hire, we're gonna have more agents, we're gonna fire people. And then you're like, who's doing the work, right? You've got the agents, you've got the humans that are left over. And then that cognitive wear and tear it's like, how much critical thinking can I do in a day, right? How much innovation can I do for a day? I was telling Carrie, for me to innovate, after like a day, I'm done. I can't do that every day. It's going to drain my system. So now you're asking us to do critical thinking, judgment, all these. Yes, these are things that we should be doing, but you're asking the bar to be raised higher. And it's gonna be like, go. And I don't think organizations are taking into consideration the mental wear and tear that this is going to have on us. And can we sustain that? Because then burnout comes.
I totally agree with you. I use Copilot very frequently, and You're doing one task, two tasks, three tasks. By the time you're at the fourth task, and it's not like one shot, like you give something, it gets you something, and you do iterations, right? You read through it and then make course corrections. But then you start feeling exhausted. There's so much data done, there's so much cognitive overload. And that's gonna impact the efficiency and the motivation of the individuals as well. So I think I'll pick that point out. So would you say that leaders have to have a balancing act when it comes to about transformation in the organization? Is like, to your point, like we need speed. How much speed do you need?
Yeah.
At 5, at 6?
Yeah. No, I think that to everyone's point, you gotta get clear about what your goal is.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not, yes, speed is gonna be a benefit, efficiency, et cetera. But to Aziz's point, words matter. Talk to me like a human. What is this going to do for me? Right? I tell my team, I'm like, we are employees in a contract with a business. The business is in a contract with us. Let's just be real. There's a legal form that I signed an employment. And you need to get the most out of that legal agreement as much as the organization is getting out of that legal agreement. And when you're talking about AI adoption, I feel like there's also this misconception that people are using AI in their life. There is no adoption challenge sometimes. It's using the tools within your own organization. Now that is the adoption challenge because of, we got regulations, we got guardrails, it's not giving you the outputs that the cloud at home gives you, right? Because you can't say what it really wants to say. But I think what we have to do as an organization have to understand what is in it for the people to use your tools within your system. And then you meet them where they're at, and then you teach them. It's not a uni course, right? Sorry, uni. I love uni, but it's not a course, right? One of the things that we do is you train in the AI. Don't teach people how to use Copilot if you're not going to teach them how to use Copilot in Copilot. So our trainings, a lot of them are in Copilot, right? It's like, here, go learn something small. Now you're going to practice in Copilot. Oh, by the way, you know what you're actually learning Copilot? You didn't know, but you're doing an exercise in Copilot. So you're subconsciously teaching people how to use Copilot, but they're not using Copilot, they're using it in context. So now, when you start teaching people within the context and the role, you understand why they're doing it. It's not about using it. Why should I use it? And when?
No, I totally agree. I think when we talk about transformations at organization level, I think primarily we are alluding towards a balancing act. You can't have a one-size-fits-all approach for everyone, and that's a balancing act. And Susan, I totally agree with you. Sometimes it's not about adoption. All of us are using AI in different aspects of our life. For example, me and my wife, one of the toughest conversations that we have over the weekend is, what are we gonna cook? We use ChatGPT. Let ChatGPT do that work for us. So Carrie, coming back to you, right? And this is going to be the closing statement for this panel is, there's a lot of investment that has been made. I think huge amount of money, private equity money is going in, and we all know what it means when it comes to PE. So, which means there's a lot of pressure on all of us in this room to demonstrate ROI. So, in your opinion, what are some of the right ways to measure what's actually working and important, and how do you identify what's not important? How does an organization should think about it?
So when we talk about striking a balance, and when we talk about investments, I sincerely think it's not just about the dollar figures that we put in. The balance is really leading with both the head and the heart. So when you lead with your head, clearly you look at numbers, you look at dollar figures, and I think that's time. And when you lead with a heart, you understand that these people that are using AI are human. It's a human-centered organization. It's a human-centered activity. So if there's no balance, you're going to end up with a bunch of chatbots trying to grow your business while forgetting the human aspect of it. So when it comes to return on investment, you're not just measuring based on how much money did AI yield towards my business, you're also measuring how happy the users are, how much their well-being has improved, and how much they just definitely feel like the better versions of themselves because they use the tool, not the tool replacing them. So when you win hearts and minds, that's when you achieve success.
That's great. Remember the word happy? I mean, I think I heard it after a long time in a tech-heavy conversation, and that's important because at the end of the day, we are humans. So we are out of time, but we'll probably, Alex, with your permission, we'll take a few questions. But just to summarize, what we are saying over here is, it starts at the top from defining the right strategy and using AI as an assistant rather than defining the strategy. Then it comes to creating that safe psychological environment for learners or for users to adopt to it. And then as an organization, you need to transform and do it in a balancing manner and balancing act. And then at the end of it, you need to make individuals feel that they're doing great, or how they're progressing and how they're contributing to the growth of the business. So yeah, but we'll take questions. Thank you.
I love this conversation because it kind of has us back to the beginning of this Sunday where we're saying the human element of it. I love, Kevin, how you discussed in the beginning the fact that it's not actually intelligent yet. Courtney and I were talking yesterday about we're almost at this cusp where because it isn't intelligent, people are relying on it so much that we're having books written, we're having things written by AI based off of past, that there's no new true knowledge coming out. And us as leaders, it's so important for us to foster those creatives, foster those people, and those that were with us last night in the room doing something with salt, right? So, but one of the properties of salt is ice cream salt. You think of it, you have this canister that has your people, they're creating something with the cream, with the flavor, with all the things. And if you have the heat coming in and you have change management, this, we do this with that, and oh, now we want this, go faster, right? Change, change, change. We have to be the ice cream salt leader and protect them so they can transform and they can become like us.
Round of applause for that.
Can we get a quick plug for your book? Really, like you told some of us at dinner, like what's the name of the book?
Salt and influence, the power of the
Love.
Not me using AI to formulate my thoughts.
Your learning leader, your HR leader, your business partners, performance management, everybody needs to get in a room and start to define the process. And nobody wants to do that because it's a lot of hard work. But we have to do that. And once, as an HR team, you start defining what is the new process with your business, where is AI going to augment the role, the tasks, start making those decisions, then you start rewriting what the new job roles are and you give people clarity. But a lot of organizations are not there because they don't know the capability of what they can do with AI. So we're going to be sitting in this ambiguity for some time. And I think as HR, we've got to try to push, or as learning, try to push leaders to start making process decisions instead of tech decisions, to start to remove that ambiguity.
I'm so glad I'm not the last one. No, I'm not. I'm glad I'm not the last one. Susan, there are so many things that you've said that are very much aligned with my thinking, and I feel like this last thing you said is gonna segue into the comment and slight, I guess, question I have. You all talked a lot about speed. And in my experience, speaking with a lot of organizational leaders, I think it's their focus on speed is the incorrect organizational goal. Because that's not a goal, it's not an outcome. It's how we get somewhere, right? It's like saying, hey, we're gonna buy a faster car just so we can go faster.
Yes.
But where are we going?
Hello.
Right? So you need to identify where you're going, what is that concrete destination you want to get to, and then we can figure out how fast would you like us to get there, and who would you like to drive, and who should focus on what in order for us to get to your destination. using the accurate mechanism, right? I don't want to call AI a tool. We talked about that during the conference. It's a mechanism. It's a mechanism for us to get to from where we are to our desired state. So in terms of identifying speed and saying AI is going to help us do things faster, do what faster? What is the outcome? Is it less people? Is it more clients? Is it higher market share? Like, what is that outcome? And I feel that a lot of leaders, organizational senior leaders, and maybe fairly, are not there yet to be able to define what that outcome is. Of course, the ultimate outcome of any organization is to make more money, right? Like, yeah, we all want to make more money, but what does that mean? Make more money by saving and less people, make more money by having more customers. And that has not yet been defined in, from my experience and speaking with a lot of leaders, how AI can help you get to making more money and what does that mean for organizations. So I think as people in our field, if I could encourage people to get executives to start thinking in that manner and to say, what is that ultimate outcome? Because that will then drive your people's strategy. That's a very important discussion that we all need to lead in this world of AI that we're stepping into and going through this transformation with them.
Love it. And I love your comment. Where are we running towards? I told my boss the same thing. She's moving fast. I'm like, where are we going? Where are we going to?
My questions relate to that as well. Is my experience in the past year is it's important to have AI end in mind, the desired outcomes. But what I've learned is, for example, at athletics, our goal was save $5 million revenue using AI and save 10,000 work hours for our workforce. And it was not successful because it's a North Star, but people who didn't know how to measure it. So it was measured manually. So it's a struggle for us. It was not successful even with that end in mind. And now with conversation with CEO, CFO, like it's not clear, right? Even though it's a process. So I'm curious from your view, what's the key leading indicator, right? Not just outcomes, not just end in mind. What are the behaviors that you're focusing on to drive, not only meet people where they are, but moving them forward to AI, right, ready culture? So what's that leading indicator for you, if you have one?
Oh, I can take that. So we've had a really good conversation earlier on really having big goals, like defining the vision. That's always important. But what matters is how you get there. And you're not going to get there like, how do you eat an elephant? You're not going to do it all at once. You'll do it with bite-sized initiatives, little experiments. And I think that what matters in that process is not being afraid to fail. It's learning from what's not working. It's also learning from what's working. And if you need a business indicator for each and every step, that's good. So let's say, for instance, for Vallarta, if you want to grow revenue, that's all nice and sexy. But how does that work? Like, which lever do you need to pull? Is it labor? Is it number of hours saved? And you're not going to eat it all at once. It'll have to be phases. So we do like that approach where step one, clearly define goals to get to the end vision. Step two is taking learnings from step one, applying what's working, what's not working, and then move on to the next phase. Because if you just give an overarching motherhood statement of where we need to be without these tiny steps to get there, then the destination will be almost impossible to achieve.
I do wonder about setting org-wide AI goals, especially early in this AI revolution. It could be really great to define at the org level we want to achieve something with AI. I wonder if it is more effective to say, regardless of AI, we need to accomplish something for this business, whether that's revenue,
Right.
or we need to enter a new market, or we need to increase our subscriber base. We have big subscriber goals. And instead of saying we're going to, I don't know, get an adoption rate with AI, we have people who are tasked with enabling AI, who are working with leaders on how to achieve those goals with AI. Like, they shouldn't have a goal themselves. They should almost be God, I don't want to call them a chief of staff, but let me work with you to help build your strategy into something that is accelerated by AI. That's really achievable. And then you can say, I helped these 5 goals, I contributed. There's a, I'm gonna try this out. I'm not a sports person, but I think in baseball there's like an assist, right? I don't know. Apparently, engineers code, by the way.
Oh my God.
But there's like, in some sport somewhere, there's some metric about how many assists you gave. And
Basketball.
right. You know, that one. We love. Yeah, I don't know, unless they have a Broadway album, I haven't heard of them. So I think that's a really good place to focus. Like, what are your assists? Not necessarily, we have 100% adoption. Everyone's using AI. We saved $7 million because we implemented this tool. One, that's really hard to prove causation. Like, that's a ton of correlation that you can't claim. Like, you are making inferences there, but you can definitely claim assists. And I think that's where you get a lot of value.
All right, I'm going to sing us out. This question is for Ozzy, and if I mispronounced your name, forgive my brain, not my heart. So, but
You won't be the first.
Putting on your TA hat, I'm a fellow TA person too. Where have you seen the most business impact measurement when it comes to talent acquisition? Where have you seen the most impact leveraging AI? Would it be from workforce planning? Would it be productivity from the team? Where have you seen the most?
So I sometimes feel like the outlier. For us, it wasn't about the big goals. It was around helping people do their jobs better. So like to the question that was asked earlier, we didn't set up organizational goals that said, okay, we're going to use AI to do this. We went to the recruiters and said, what would you do more with? What would you do more of if you were able to have more time? And then how can we utilize AI to give you that time? And where we found the biggest impact was in upgrading quality. What we were dealing with right now is people were so caught up with transactional work, looking at resumes, evaluating for min quals, trying to figure out if you went to Stanford and were you going to be a better employee for us, all that other nonsense. When we were able to utilize AI to cut through a lot of that transactional work, suddenly we had people thinking about, hey, how can I make a better choice? How can I answer the question of, this is the hardest thing for me to figure out about candidates? They suddenly had time to problem solve and to think. So it was getting all that transitional work, which they couldn't get their job done if they couldn't do, to get that done quicker so that the brains could kick in. And they come up with solutions that have nothing to do with AI, but AI enabled them with that time.
We've got
It's a super cheap
request right here.
It's shockingly quick. But again, it was more of a bottom-up approach than it was a top-down. Y'all heard me talk about meeting people where they are. Starting with an individual contributor and saying, what do you wish you had more time for? Okay, could AI help you do that? So it wasn't coming from the organization, it was driven by the individual. That's where we found to have the impact.
I just wanted to loop back to the question of what were the highest levers. I love that question. And two of the things you said really struck me, and I think they're so core. Susan, you talked about, in the flow of work, we really have to ask for what are we solving for, and capture that. And Carrie, you talked about what I think is kind of smart experimentation. It's like in the flow of work, trying things out and learning in the process what works so we can get to the learning process. well, where does that show up in our incentive structures and metrics? Is that even acknowledged?
Mhm.
And then I loved your Kevin, your personality of
Sports.
assist. Because again, you know, we talk about one system, one enterprise, and assisting each other. Again, does that show up in our metrics? Does that show up in our performance review? I think that is the highest level.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think one thing is those metrics, the people metrics, and then guess what else is gonna come next is your agent metrics. And yesterday I was joking around with Summer about the new word that I'm learning, he said with all these software engineers, and I'm not a software engineer. Like, let's talk about the telemetry. Well, how productive was the agent, right? Was it able to do what it needed to do? What kind of metrics? How efficient was it? And so now we're gonna get to a place where we're gonna have people performance, agent performance, complementing it together to understand the whole work ecosystem. That's the stuff that like blows my mind.
Oh, take us on. Yeah, thank you, Alex, for allowing us for some additional minutes. And I would really like to thank all of you for these active participation, questions, thoughts, commands. By the way, did you really use AI to share your thoughts there? Or was it more? No,
It's okay.
kidding.
We embracing it.
So I think someone mentioned about where are we going, how fast we need to go. I read somewhere and it said that if you have to be successful at something, you have to keep doing the boring things again and again and again. Get up every day, repeat the same routine. I think that's what's going to happen with AI as well. We all love AI. It's going to help all of us. And every day we're going to keep trying to move the needle. Some days it won't move. Fine. Go back, take rest, come back again, and then move the needle. So let's give a big hand for all our panelists. And also let's take a moment to say thank you to the Opal Group, the organizers. I mean, the hospitality that this team brings in is unmatched. I hope a lot of us will agree to that. So thank you.
Thank you.